Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. All Things Middle-earth here with a video looking at the most recent update in the game focused around the Master at Arms and some different weapons and also the new Impart Wisdom feature in the game. So I'm going to go over my thoughts pretty quickly on this and I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. Also, our Discord server is linked down below as well, so if you want to join us over there for conversations that take place like this one, then I'd love to see you over there. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the video. All right, so there are kind of three main parts to this update. The first one being that they have added a strengthening level to fine equipment or blue equipment. So now it can be strengthened instead of 3 stars at a maximum to 4 stars. Now, I don't have any that I had strengthened at 3 stars currently. I ended up dismantling a lot more of my stuff recently. But this is good news for anybody because if you're free to play, you're just going to have better equipment without having to spend more money and get more gear. So your blue equipment's going to be a little bit more relevant. And even if you're a heavy spender, at least for me, I'm definitely probably in that whale territory. Maybe not as much as some, but there are points where I run out of my really good gear. I mean, I do have a lot of strengthening I should do here, but once I get everything lined out, I will have commanders I'm wanting to use that just don't have like my best gear. So having some backup blue gear that's solid is going to be really good. So regardless of where you are in the scale, I think it's going to be a worthwhile thing. They did also add some new effects. They now all have 4 options. I don't think these are going to be very game changing, but just getting the extra strengthening level, I think it's going to be nice. It's going to allow blue gear to be a little bit more relevant for a little bit longer, because for a lot of players, they use the blue gear until they get that purple gear or that gold gear strengthened enough to be more powerful. But now it's going to make that blue gear last a little bit longer. So I think it's a solid thing on that there. So that's kind of part 1 of the update. Part 2 is the Master at Arms. That's this button here in the tavern right here. So if you click this, it's going to take you to this guy, and you have 2 options to either impart wisdom or to sell equipment. Now, the first one we're going to look at is impart wisdom. And very, very simply put, again, if you want to look at this and kind of go through it more in detail later, that would be good. But you can basically just select gear and get rid of gear you don't want to level up your wisdom on your commanders, and they can level up 4 times, 1 for each of the gear types. At each of those levels, they're going to get 1 skill point, so 4 skill points maxed, and at each level, they're going to obtain an equipment familiarity instantly at 50%. So if I, for example, have my Gandalf the White here, who I leveled up all the way, I put a brand new item on him of any of these categories because he has all the levels, it's going to start out at 50%. So I think it makes characters a little bit more viable to try, testing different builds or different weapons, but I don't think it's going to be something that's really a big deal. For the most part, you get your good gear, you put it on your commanders, and you leave that gear on them until you get gear that's way better, and then you put that one on and you level it up. It's not something that's going to be game breaking, but it's not going to hurt. And really quick, I need to interject. I forgot to mention this during my initial recording, but just in case people were wondering, the imparted wisdom does go from season to season. The only way to find that out is if you're imparting wisdom, you have to click impart, and then there's a question mark right here. You click that, and it says at the bottom, equipment proficiency level and equipment material points will be retained between seasons. So it's kind of hard to find that, and I've had a lot of people ask about it, and then I realized I recorded and didn't mention it, but yes, you do keep these levels between seasons. The big thing here is going to be the extra skill points you get. Now, I was kind of hoping that this was going to be more game shaking than I think it is going to be, and I'd love to hear what you think below. But my thought was, I was wondering if with the extra 4 skill points, if there are any commanders who are now at certain respect levels going to be able to hit different skill thresholds sooner and become more viable. Now, obviously, if you're a mega whale and you have a respect 25 commander, you're going to have access to entire different skill trees that other players wouldn't have. If I have my Witch King, for example, at R3 and you've got yours at 25, which I don't know if there's any 25, but I know there are some high 16, 17 level ones. I mean, that's an entire other skill maxed out with 15 points. So obviously, if you're a mega whale, this may not play as big of a role, but I do think for those mid-level spenders or even free-to-play players, adding those extra skill points it has a potential to be helpful. So I did Gandalf the White, as I mentioned, and I'll show you kind of what my thought process there was. I also did Lotr on my other account. So Gandalf the White here, my thought process for him was that I want to get as many skills maxed out as possible. So I went into White Rider and Horsemanship, and then I have the White maxed out. I have 1 point in Blindside for some crowd control with the stun, and then usually I would go into Wizard for the stun there. But let's see here. He has 7 more levels, so with 7 more points before I had leveled him out, he wasn't going to be able to max out Wizard and Surge. But now with those extra 4 points, I can have the option to max out Wizard and Surge and still have an additional extra point to throw somewhere else if I want to. So I think it opens things up a little bit. Again, mine's at Respect 5, which I think is pretty decent for a Tier 3 commander. For me, getting him to Respect 5 was a lot. So I think if it allows your commanders to be more viable at lower Respect levels or just at Respect 5, I mean, again, in this instance, Gandalf the White is going to be able to have a skill maxed out he may not have otherwise, or just a skill like Surge leveled up more, which again with Gandalf, his white is going to trigger when damage is dealt, and so having an ability like Surge that's going to deal damage twice, you're going to kind of keep having your skills kind of piggyback off each other, and one's going to proc then the other one, and so on and so forth. So the more powerful those can be, in theory, the better this character can be. And I think there are situations like that where things like this can happen, where those extra points allow you to just get over the hump a little bit more and get something maxed out to do a little bit more damage. But that's why I went with Gandalf the White there. And from what I can tell in my conversations, it seems like a lot of people are just going to be focusing on their best commanders. I've heard people mention Theoden. I've heard people mention Galadriel. I've heard people mention Legolas. I've heard people mention Gandalf the Grey. I think King Aragorn got brought up. Again, it seems like a lot of Tier 3, kind of good Tier 2 commanders are probably going to be the best focus. But I would be curious if there are situations where a commander like Dwalin is one of my favorite Tier 1 commanders. I'd be curious how that extra 4 skill points would work into his kit, and if that's going to allow for anything more interesting for him, or if it's just going to still keep him kind of in the Tier 1 category, while still a solid Tier 1, maybe not still competing with Tier 2 commanders. But again, I'd love to hear what everyone thinks about the Impart Wisdom feature and who you're imparting wisdom to first, and what your overall thoughts are on it. So that's Impart Wisdom. The next one is Sell Equipment. I'm not a huge fan of this, but I don't think it's a bad thing. But it basically is going to give players the options to select gear and sell it for gold. So if you have a lot of gear you're not using, like green gear, some extra gold might be nice. But in my mind, the way this game works, gold is temporary. It's season by season. You lose gold every season, where gear sticks around for the long run. Obviously, green gear you're not really needing season by season. But to me, it doesn't seem really worth it to exchange gear that you have for gold. Even if you look at gold gear, it only sells for 3,000, so it's not like it would be worth doing that at all, or even purple gear for 2,000. I mean, maybe if you're just a crazy whale, it's going to allow them to just really quickly max out like every troop upgrade. But at a certain point, gold just kind of becomes redundant. So to me, I don't really see how this helps it become more relevant, because it's allowing more ways for us to get it. But I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the Sell Equipment, but I'd love to hear what you think about it as well. There is one last thing in this update, and that is the Traveling Merchant. There's sometimes a briefcase that will show up. Let me see if I can get lucky and get him to show up here. Okay, we actually got it to show up. I'm not sure which one this will be. Okay, actually, this is the exact example. This stuff usually doesn't happen when I'm recording. But now they have replaced equipment, or the item used to exchange here. It used to be equipment fragments. Now it's the Matham vouchers. So I have these 3 options here that I can get with my Matham vouchers if I would like to. It sounds like there's also going to be options where you can use gold to buy items. I did not get any of those. But I was lucky enough to get one example for the video, so I'll take that there. But basically, you can use the Matham vouchers to do things here. So it sounds like, based on the update they talked about in the Discord, they're looking at phasing out the equipment fragments and letting the Matham vouchers take the place of that. It also sounds like the Matham exchange here, these items are going to be replaced with vouchers. If I understood that correctly, it's just not happened yet. So again, that's kind of all the updates. A lot of stuff focused around equipment, which I think is good. I do think the Impart Wisdom is kind of the main exciting part of this update, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But again, hopefully they just continue adding updates and things to the game that help the game just continue to grow. But again, that is kind of the majority of this part of the update. Again, I just wanted to focus on the kind of weapons, the Master at Arms part of the update. So I'd love to hear what you think about that and the other things we talked about today. But that's going to do it for me in this one, and I hope to see you in a future video.